Okay, welcome to Podnutz Daily for June 9th, 2008. This is the first video podcast of Podnutz Daily I'm doing. I definitely need a haircut and a shave, and I'll probably have that done for tomorrow. But thanks, everybody who's watching. Just going to get right into it here, as I usually do in Podnutz Daily. It's going to be a short show, about 10 minutes, and then hopefully we're going to have a caller at the end. Now, I want to have the show set up that there's going to be probably one caller for every episode that we do, and I'm going to have that set up through Skype. But until I get the Skype completely set up, I'm not going to give out the Skype number to call in yet. I'll give it out tomorrow, and then I'll make sure I have everything completely set up. Because I think the Skype audio is not going to sound great, but we'll see how that goes too. Okay, first computer I worked on today was a Gateway desktop. Now, if you listen to the last couple episodes of Podnutz Daily, I was talking about the same Gateway desktop, and what was happening with it was we would power it on, it would run for a couple minutes, and if we tried to do a virus scan or like an AVG scan, thing would cut out and would reboot itself. If we just let it sit and do nothing, it wouldn't cut out. It would just act normal and idle fine. So I figured at first it was an overheat problem. But we checked out the motherboard, we checked out the CPU fan, checked out if there's any capacitors blown or anything that would be causing a heat problem, and it wasn't. So that led me to believe that it was the hard drive, and here's how we checked out if it was the hard drive. First, we ran Knoppix off the live CD. Now, if you run Knoppix off the live CD, the computer is basically running an operating system without using the hard drive at all. So we ran Knoppix, and the philosophy was if Knoppix works, then the hard drive is the problem, because we're just running off the CD. So if Knoppix is running fine, we know the processor's good, we know everything else in the computer's good, we know the motherboard's good, and the problem has to lie in the hard drive. So we did that, and the problem was in the hard drive. So now I had to determine whether it was the hard drive itself that was a bad physical hard drive, or was there something wrong with the Windows installation. Was there something like corrupted in the Windows installation, or was there something just wrong with Windows, a software problem? So we had to determine if it was a hardware or software problem at this point. So how I did that was he had Windows XP installed on the machine, and he had all his programs set up nice and neat, and all his settings were set to the way he liked it. So I didn't want to just destroy that and do a reformat and start from scratch with him, because it would be too much work, honestly, for me. So what I decided to do was install XP as what I call a parallel install, which means you install XP, but you don't get rid of the old installation. You install Windows in another folder on the hard drive. So the original installation is in Windows, in a folder called Windows, and the second installation is we put in a folder called Windows 2. And as you boot the computer, it prompts you to, it asks you if you want to boot into the original installation of Windows or into the one that we just created. This way, everything of his is intact. We're not deleting anything. We're not even changing anything. We're just installing Windows alongside of the first installation. So we did that. We installed Windows right alongside the first installation, and it installed fine. It ran fine. The drivers were fine. So that basically told me that the hard drive itself was okay and able to run Windows. There wasn't anything physically wrong with the hard drive. It's a great tip. If you don't want to lose customers' data, and he's got all of his settings set up and everything's all in his My Documents folders, if you just install Windows as a parallel install right alongside the first installation, put it in another folder, then all you have to do after you install Windows is just move all of his information, his data, his pictures over to the new installation of Windows, and it's a lot faster than doing a full reformat. Anyway, the installation that we installed, that second installation, worked, so I decided to go back to his first original installation and see what the error was that was actually causing the problem, because I knew at this point it was a software error. Here's a good trick you could do. The guy was complaining that he had a virus, and that was when his computer started giving him trouble. Well, every time I tried to run AVG on his Windows installation, the computer would reboot itself, so I could never get through a full virus scan. So by installing the second Windows installation right alongside the first and booting into the second installation, we installed AVG into the second installation, ran a full scan of the hard drive, got rid of any virus, and then went back to the first installation to see if that actually handled the problem. And in this case, it did. So we basically went in a roundabout way of removing a virus, and now his original installation was fine. So that's something you guys could do if you're thinking of how you could possibly run a virus scan, and if the computer keeps giving you an error, rebooting in the middle of the scan, you could always install a separate operating system next to the original one, run whatever program you want in there, and maybe it'll fix the first one. Well, I think it was kind of a long shot, but in this case it did. That was the first computer. You want to hear about the second computer, or you want me to just end off right now? Okay. Well, maybe one or two more. All right. The second computer was something I don't particularly like to do, but is rewarding when it works, and it was a laptop repair. I had to repair a power jack on an Acer laptop. Guy tripped over the cord, and the DC jack was just pretty much demolished on the inside of the computer and just flitting around in there, just jingling all around, all the pieces. So I did what I like to do, and I went to Radio Shack, and I found out what size tip his power adapter has on his laptop. And I went to Radio Shack, and I bought like a heavy-duty DC jack that would actually fit the tip for his AC adapter. Instead of buying the part from Acer or buying a similar part at Radio Shack, I always buy the heavy-duty kind, because those laptop jacks, they break they break so easy, and the company makes it that way. I think the manufacturers make it that way because if they do break, then you're gonna have to buy a new laptop. So I think they think they're gonna make more money that way. So I always put a heavy duty jack on the laptops. I'll put it when I actually post this show on Podnutz Daily in the written form. I'll put a link to the jack that I use so you guys could see what I'm talking about. It actually screws onto the outside of the plastic and sits on the inside of the plastic as well. So the only way to get this jack off of the side of the laptop is to basically rip the laptop apart, and that's not going to happen normally. So it's like I'm trying to make them idiot-proof. Anyway, I installed that jack into the Acer, and then I didn't have it. Well, actually, I did test it, and it didn't work. So tomorrow I got to go find out why that didn't work. Anyway, I wasn't going to tell you that part, but that was that computer. But the tip I want to give you about that is always buy it. You could buy them at Radio Shack. I think it's size N like Nancy or size M like Mary. It's a metal DC jack, and it just screws right on the laptop. You just got to solder the leads to it and solder the leads to the motherboard, and it's super heavy duty. So it's always the way I like to repair laptops. Okay, last thing I want to go over is a MacBook Pro. Okay, I worked on an Apple today, and we don't usually get Apples in, but this woman had called up and said she had a MacBook Pro that kept crashing, and it wouldn't connect to the internet. So she took it to the Apple store. She took it to the Genius Bar. They made her buy a new battery. I don't know why. They made her buy a new battery, and then they gave her a Genius Disc, I think they call it, or something like that. Anyway, I don't even know it was on the Genius Disc. I didn't even try it. But she tried it, apparently, and it wasn't working. That's why she called.